whenever there is a discussion about Israel's so-called right to exist, or do you believe in Zionism, or do you think Israel or Jews have a right to stay in Israel? The oftentimes you hear from one side saying no, Jews should go back to Europe. This is Arab land or Palestinian land. It's always been like that, and Jews sort of came in, invaded, and established a colonial state to basically take over. Now, from certain parts of the opposition, you'll hear, no, this is Jewish land because we were here thousands of years ago. And we have the sort of some basically some mystical tie to the land also. And I think both of these approaches are bad, and I think are missing the sort of central picture. Even though one is technically, you could say, more correct, I think fundamentally these two should not matter, because the right to nation, or sort of right to land or right to property, comes from individual rights of the people inside that nation, not some sort of imposed order, or some sort of imposed culture that is there, or some sort of people that were there. So today we're gonna discuss, yeah, basically this, discuss it a bit further, and we might discuss even a little bit. Me and Alex have talked about sort of the foundation or the founding of Israel and how it happened, and yeah, I think there are some interesting thoughts there. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today is Alex. And Alex, just to start, what do you generally make of sort of, I would call it both sides of the same coin? The fact that, Palestinians have the right to the land because Arabs have been here. Or, they would even say, if you look at the Roman map from like the 4th century, they call it Palestine. So, don't they have a right to be there? And sort of the opposite, this is what is it called? Eretz Israel, the
hmm
land of Israel.
hmm Well, okay. So, in there's certainly, I would say, issues with both of these descriptions. Okay, um, uh, from from a historical perspective, I find it very difficult to collude with the idea that this has always been, kind of, Arab land, it and they even go further as to make even crazier claims, um, that even and that the Palestinians are the descendants of um of the uh, you know uh, I mean, they go a very, very, like a long way with the Philistines, okay? And if you know who the Philistines were Greeks, and they definitely were not Arab, although every Palestinian will tell you, no, we're 100% Arab. And also, but in any event, that's not really my main concern with that depiction. And on the other side of the coin, there's also some serious, I wouldn't necessarily say historical issues with the way that the Jews are kind of saying, yeah, the Jews have always been here, and it's our land because it was given to us by God. Yeah, I mean, from a historical perspective, yes, you can definitely say from the first Aliyah, going back to the old Yishuv, right, which was coming out of the 1400s, which is predating Islam. Some of these movements have been, but the whole kind of the mystical reasons behind it. Okay, so you're going to have to take that to the court of opinion and try to battle that out. Most people will say that's mumbo jumbo, right? You can't, maybe God gave this land to you. If God exists, maybe he didn't. Yeah, it's an argument with yourself, really. Um, Now, in terms of the arguments that have been made about, the kind of the colonization, et cetera, yeah, you would not want to colonize this area, because there's no natural resources. It's a very poor area to come into actually colonize. Better to be part of an empire and then just to kind of, kind of say, mine now, right? Don't, and, that's as a part of um, a larger colonization where they have much more interesting stuff. Don't come specifically to Israel and colonize. Go, colonize the whole Middle East, okay? Like the Turks did and like the Brits did, right? And then you can just say, screw it, I'll take Israel as well. Why not? But um, and more on to the fact, which I think that anybody who's listening to our broadcast will agree with, most of this land has been privately bought. Okay. Now you can say that, the Jewish Agency or the World Zionist Federation, that maybe, that wasn't bought by individuals, but it was bought on behalf of individuals. Okay. Who bought it from farmers, right? And brought it from Arabs, okay, who were, prior to 1948. Although that practice had been going on really since the First World War, so the first Aliyah, as they call it, which people like to say that is the first time that Jews had come back to Israel. No, that would be going back to the old Yishuv, right? Would be because of the Spanish, the yeah, I would probably say the Spanish Inquisition caused a lot of the Jews to actually leave and come to Israel. Okay. And so that is kind of the first time you're going to see a mass exodus of other areas of the world to Israel, although the practice of coming back had been something that had really existed since Babylonian times. So very, very soon, 1 or 2 centuries after the initial Exodus, right? And with this, with the kind of the old Yishuv, and especially with even the old Yishuv times, you did see individuals in Spain purchase even, very, very famous modern day landmarks in modern day Israel, right? Like a lot of the kind of the Jewish religious centers inside of Sfat, okay? They were, purchased by rich Jews in Spain. Okay, so we're talking, during the time of like the 15th, 16th century. So really quite a long time ago. And so so when you're ascertaining whether or not land belongs to a person, okay, or to an individual, it's relatively easy. Okay, you come, you prove your ownership of a particular property, and it's pretty cut and dry. But making these claims of, okay, belongs to the Jews. Well, okay, are you trying to say that this is property that belongs to the Jewish Agency, which has been purchased by them because of donations individuals have given it? I think that's a legit claim. I think that is, it belongs to this group of Jews, right, who have made a decision that they want to own this piece of property, right? But as to all of these other kind of collective, property rights, I think are sort of, it's difficult to really prove them.
Well, not even prove them. Any sort of idea of a public property or sort of collective property is a stolen concept. It's an oxymoron. Property means it is owned by someone, and it could be owned by specific agency or a specific trust. We have systems for those, but there is no trust that is sort of like this is a trust of people with a specific pigment of color skin or something like that. That simply that is not possible. And so yeah, this general and even when they say sort of this was owned by Palestinians, well, What do you mean? Do you mean the sort of landlords somewhere in Turkey that owned the specific parts of the land? Are you talking about, as you said, at some point in the 19th century, or even as you said earlier, it was a bunch of Europeans sort of buying some portions of the land. Uh, a lot of Israel, as with most of the world, a lot of world is still pretty much empty. A lot of Israel, when Jews started settling, on even earlier, was empty. There was not much there. And again, if now sort of talking about the sort of founding of Israel, because I'm really, we had a conversation on the philosophy forum, which is for platinum members. So I recommend becoming a platinum member on the website. We had a short discussion on colonialism, and there is this sort of idea, this inherent sort of evil of colonialism that basically somehow, let's bring up an example of like Africa, is somehow collectively owned by sort of all people who live there, and any sort of white man or whatever you want to call it who like goes there is like violating the rights of all those people. But if I'm someone who is on the ship and on the way to East Asia, I go somewhere in Africa, I don't see anybody there, I make a settlement, I make a port, so people can stop on the way to East Asia. Which What property sort of have I violated of other people? And similarly, when it comes to Israel, if there was land, there was truly like specific part of the land that was not owned by anyone. And again, sort of the idea that you somehow collectively own the land that you're not even using, you're not making even any use of. Again, property rights, or sort of the reason why we have property rights is because we protect individuals' right to act. We protect sort of someone's right to sort of use the land, use the products of his labor to do something with it. If we can say we all collectively own the moon, but if you don't make any use of it, what is the point of even sort of this? And yeah, so when it comes to Israel, as you say, either some land that no one was there was settled, or the land was bought from people who owned it, and then people went there. Again, what is wrong with that? The only person that could find something wrong with that is someone who's a collectivist, who doesn't actually have any sort of understanding of property rights, just has some mystical view of basically the land itself is somehow collectively owned, and you don't even have to use it. It's just, and the purpose of ownership is not even use, it's just sort of having it to stagnate.
Mm.
um
Well, I also just want to say, like, let's imagine, okay, um, that that colonialism was all very, very bad, okay, and um, that okay, um, specifically with Israel, right? And again, I'm just, let's imagine it from the lens that all, unquestionably all colonialism is bad, right? I'm not saying I agree with it, but what Israelis did, what the Jews did to fight the British, they blew them up, right? They did not. So the British were here, right? We're in the land of Israel. Okay, we're in you know the the post Ottoman um post Ottoman Palestine. Okay, so the British Mandate. The Jews fought them, very harshly, for what they viewed as the white papers. Okay. And the white papers, of course, were the British, in order to appease the racist Arabs, the British promised to limit Jewish immigration into the land of Israel, which actually caused a lot of Jews to be killed because the boats were sent back to Europe. And if you just look at the Jews and the British, they very rarely colluded. There was a lot of a huge amount of animosity that was there at the time. And like I said, I mean, the Elgon and the Lehi, they resorted to actual terrorism. They killed a lot of people. They did a lot of very bad things as a result of them being here. So all of these kind of all of these kinds of arguments, right, over the kind of the good colonialism, bad colonialism, there was no there was no there's as far it's very hard for me to see that there would be any type of Jewish colonization of the area, because they did so expressly fighting the Turks and expressly fighting the Brits, right? But that's they don't care, right? The people who are coming with these kind of collective responsibilities, right? They don't care. It is the sin. It's irrelevant if it's been good colonization, bad colonization, really a real colonization, or they were fighting the colonization. It's irrelevant. There were Jews. The questions end there. That is all they need to know, right? Were there Jews or were there no Jews, right? Who were, immigrating to Israel. Um, um, that's really all they seem to want to really care about. And all of the kind of very stupid, I mean, very dumb uh things that people say, like go back to Poland. I mean, it's the dumbest thing. I mean, if you know, most Jews, most Jews who are in Israel emigrated from from Arab countries, okay? And so yeah, I mean, Poland, what part? The Polish Jews died. Yeah, they didn't make it to Israel. Um, and again, it's viewing all of this through this very, very collectivist lens, okay? Collective of who the land is owned by, right? Even you have to this day, okay, land that is owned in the so-called West Bank, right? That is owned by the Jewish agency that was purchased like over 100 years ago. And you know, and year after year, a petition goes to the Israeli Supreme Court. When can we start breaking ground on our property? When can we start breaking ground on our property? And it's refused by the Israeli government, right? By the army, actually, because in the so-called West Bank, it's the only area in Israel whereby, in order to have an extension onto your house, you actually have to get the permission of the army. It's ludicrous, okay? That to say that I mean, it's actually frustrating that people that you would have such a warped lens by which to view kind of reality. And it's only because the Palestinians understand that they have a collective right to the land. Okay. They believe it tremendously. And therefore, doesn't matter if it's an individual Palestinian that has sold his house, right? For $1 billion, okay? Doesn't matter. He cannot do that. That's punishable by death. So it doesn't matter if on paper it belongs to the individual Jew, or there's no paper that provides any kind of proof of ownership. It's irrelevant. It's a Jew that's trying to build a house. That's all we need to know. That's it. Beyond that, I'm drawing you know, I'm drawing a blank here. I don't know what are we supposed to do? Who owns this land? Is it oh, but I have proof. It belongs to this individual. His name's James. I don't know. It belongs to we don't know, right? They kind of pretend that they don't know, right? And again, you see this as well with the revisionist history, okay, that goes on. In that, there's no way to read history to understand that the Palestinians are here for thousands and thousands of years. Okay, why would you come here? It would be a crazy thing, right? It would be, you had the The I don't want to call it colonization. I would call it the Islamic conquest. All right, whereby you had some who were living here after that. Some, again, very few. And then you had a massive wave of immigration that happened towards the end of the Ottoman rule, right? Because it was no picnic to be even an Arab, right, living underneath the Ottomans. It was rough, okay? They had their fiefdom and it was for them. The Arabs were, they thought of the Arabs as scum, right? I mean, the Jews were worse, but at least the Jews had some money. Okay, I mean, the Jews could buy a little bit of influence. The Arabs couldn't.
We have a super chat from Apollos, thank you so much, and a super chat from Bonnie, thank you so much. So some people in the chat were talking about sort of how Israel owns like 80 to 90% of the land, meaning like the government itself or
Mhm.
the state itself. And yeah, we would definitely say that is sort of
So,
problematic. State should never or it should very rarely. Maybe you could. I don't see any case, but maybe you could find some
yeah,
cases.
sorry,
Uh,
I do also just want to come in and interject a little bit here.
sure.
Okay, so a lot of this is going to be lands that was owned by the Jewish agency, okay, as in was purchased by the Jewish agency, right? Um, you know, pre-Israel existing as a country, okay, and they purchased it from individuals, okay. So now you have a whole group of people who own these deeds, right? And the Jewish agency, you have the Jewish agency is also has some government aspect to it. But, you know, I'm talking about there are, it is really a big problem when you think about it. The government shouldn't be this powerful, right? But so you have a lot of areas of land that were owned by the Jewish agency and the World Zionist Congress that was purchased with money given to them, right, by rich donors. And you know, I think that land has to obviously be sold off, right? But then you have to go first of all to the Jewish agency with your plans, which by the way, a brand new settlement was just approved a few months ago. And it's on land that the Jewish agency has owned the deed. They've owned the deed since 180 since I think it's 1889 or 1905, I can't remember. Okay, and they haven't been able to break ground on it. So when people say that the government owns the land, okay, I think that it is a little bit a little bit yeah, it's a little bit deceiving, right? Because the Jewish agency and the government, it's not it's not one glove, it's not one hand in one glove, right? Yeah. It's not two hands in one glove. It's not. Sorry, I had to think about my own, my own words there for a second. Because remember as well that the World Zionist Congress and also the Jewish Agency for Israel, when they had the deeds on a lot of these land, it was specifically for, a socialist like state, right? That the whole concept of, oh, well, no, we don't really need to own the land. We don't need to, put in a request to, the Jewish agency can have it forever, right? I mean, it's also, you need to remember like the political leanings, okay, of those people, and even the whole even forcing, okay, literally forcing some of the kibbutzim to privatize was a struggle. All right, they didn't want to, you know, they didn't want to privatize because they were getting a lot of money from the government, right? So there's it's not just as simple as the government has, owns 80 to 90 to even a million, percent, right, of the land. Is it really the government, or and by the way, is it also because the people it's on a kibbutz still, right? Which is a big, I'm totally against this. Okay, I'm totally against the government holding deeds, all right, of plots of land. But it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah, I mean, depends who what the person saying is trying to say. I mean, the first time I heard about this was from David Smith, and he was pretty much making the case that Israel is totalitarian because the state owns like 90% of its land. Just a heads up, when it comes to states like Nevada, I think the federal government owns like 87% of the land in Nevada, and that's not even talking about the
Yeah.
state of Nevada, but the federal government owns parts of the state of Nevada. So
Yeah.
while this, of course, are sort of troubling thing, as in, government should play no role or very little role when it comes to sort of owning property directly, that is not disqualifying a case, especially when there is nuance or when you can see,
Well,
like, you don't look at few numbers and then decide if a state is
mhm,
totalitarian or not, or sort of these things. You look at, well, what is actually happening on the ground. And when you look at Israel, you don't see the type of totalitarian Soviet Union type of thing where there is very little private property or pretty much non private property. It's clearly something different is going on
and
in Israel. And yeah, we
and
can still push for better stuff without
yeah,
saying that the current
and
Israel is in any way totalitarian.
and what does Nevada and Israel have in common, right? They're both mainly deserts. Okay. So again, you also have to remember who on earth wants to live in the middle of a desert, right? And again, you have the Aravad Desert, right? It's not just the Negev, okay? You have a lot of this area. Again, a bad country to colonize. I would not colonize Israel. I would colonize Kuwait. All right. I would start there and then I'd see if I had the appetite for Israel. Okay. Yeah. Most of it's only because Israel invented things like drip irrigation. Okay. That made it so that, and even then, sometimes it's really on the cusp of, whether or not you have to be constantly vigilant, okay, about um you know about about how feasible it's going to be, right, for you to get your next crop, okay. And also, like, are we going to start to have these massive forest fires as well? It's a real balancing act, okay. Are we going to have it? Are we not? Are we not? It's crazy. You can A lot of these areas, it's going to take an enormous amount of time before civilians can go. And then, when I say enormous amount of time, it could be only 10 years, but the development has to start now already, okay, into this. You have to start investing into this, right? The Arava Desert, amazing, beautiful, phenomenal, okay, but there's serious issues, right? When it comes to whether or not you can have, 2 million people living in it tomorrow. Okay. You have to start working on that already now.
Yeah, I mean, I would still advocate just sell it off and see what if people even want to
Yeah.
make something out of it. But again, that's, Israel is a democratic nation that has elected
Hmm.
representatives. If people want to actually privatize the land, they can
Hmm.
go in and vote in the representatives that want them. Currently, Israel politically is not even in the, and it's also not the most sort of like a pressing issue. The main issue right now is the actual security of the rest of the Israel than a bunch of deserts for development. So the first thing that has to be figured out is Gaza and the West Bank, and then we can talk about sort
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
selling off.
And the issue is that the issue, I think, is as well as about how much money it really does cost in order to figure out a lot of the big problems that the desert really does, like, there's a lot of big problems that the deserts pose. And I think that whoever is willing to, there's a few people who would be willing to invest the money. But again, it's not as many, right? It's not as they don't have as much money as obviously, right, as the government, right, who just has a blank check to do anything. So it would take somebody special. Maybe Elon Musk can do it, right? That would be nice. Screw this space, whatever the hell. Come to Israel and figure out how to put yeah, how about having affordable housing, right? In the Arava Desert. Everybody will benefit from that. Okay. And you can, you know, solve the Middle East crisis while you're at it. Affordable housing is in like, not $4 million for like a 3 bedroom apartment in Jerusalem. Okay. Because there's like a land shortage going on in Israel. So maybe Elon Musk and Donald Trump, although there is already a Trump Heights, okay, that is in the Golan. Oh, I love it. It's very funny.
Yeah, apparently they renamed something in the Golan after Trump, which yeah, Netanyahu can play this game very well. With
Uh,
that, we have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says, Team Alex, definitely. And we have the reality show coming up in just about a few minutes or so. Talking about the dead children in Gaza, Hamas is at fault. Some people might remember there was a New York Times article from, I think, even like last year, talking about look at these X-rays of like children with bullets in their head.
mm.
Israel is wiping out children, and now Times of Israel have released sort of a response to that, and we'll go through both of these articles. Alex, any last thoughts?
I just want to, put in here as a defense for Ramat Trump, which is in the north. As far as I understood, it was individuals who wanted to call their new town Ramat Trump. I don't think Bibi had anything to do with it. Although, who knows? Okay, it would have been a good political move, right? Either way. I recommend for any more information about the war in the north, specifically maybe even Ramat Trump, the Alma Center. And in terms of the history of Israel, I really recommend anybody reading up about the old Yeshuv and also reading up on, there's some amazing books out there as well about the first two Aliyahs, okay, which should dispel a lot of this garbage that's out there.
Yeah, when it comes to renaming, whenever I hear renaming, I usually think automatically of government. If it was actually sort of a town or like a town council or individuals who directly own the thing, that yeah, absolutely. I mean, I might still have a problem with that, but I have a right to do so. With that, join us for the reality show in just about a minute or so. Thank you, Alex, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye bye.